everyone, RogueGold here. Welcome back to The Division 2. In this one, I've got a news roundup for you, and we have a lot to cover today, including, you may have heard rumors about the return of the Caduceus. They are indeed true, and we're going to go over everything that we know. We'll talk about some incoming additional compensation for yesterday's server instability, if you were impacted by that. We'll go over some quotes about the devs' intent to rebalance Escalation Tokens, which has been a huge topic that's been boosted further with the launch of this latest patch, and even more. So buckle up, plenty coming your way. As always, we've got timestamps down below to each and every story that we're talking about in case you want to skip around. If you do enjoy this one though, and you want to see more from me, then I would appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. A big shout out and thank you to our channel members as always. Thank you so much for your continuous generosity and support of my work. But without further ado, let's dive in. So, let's start with the big one that's got everybody talking. What is all of this buzz around the return of the Caduceus? For those who are not aware, the Caduceus was an exotic AR in the Division 1. Here's a look at it in game, and it holds a lot of significance for people. It is one of the earliest special weapons in the game. I think it existed before even the exotic name and classification was there, so that brings with it a lot of nostalgia. People really just enjoyed its playstyle as well, thanks to its talent of the same name. It read, each critical hit heals you and the group for 1% of your skill power. Can only heal each player once every 0.2 seconds. So, you know, it wasn't your average max DPS meta exotic or anything like that, but it was beloved nonetheless. So, it was two players surprised to log into the Division 2's new update yesterday, and upon looking in the expertise menu, you'll find that the Caduceus has appeared. It looks identical to how it did in the Division 1, which I think is awesome. But, to answer your burning questions, no, this cannot currently be obtained. At least we've not found a way to do so. The devs have yet to give any official comment on when or how this will release. However, there's a pretty popular theory going around, and it is what I believe personally that we will see play out. Back on Monday, you may recall that the patch notes included this interesting note at the end, stating that a Battle for Brooklyn DLC event was on the way soon. And so, now that the update is live, if you go into the event's timeline menu, you will see that on May 21st, there is indeed a node for this. It has the same kind of special border that a major event or event pass would normally receive. So, given that Brooklyn was very much a callback and nostalgia trip to the Division 1, given that the Caduceus was a beloved Division 1 weapon, I fully believe that this will be a reward from the event in some capacity, whatever shape said event ends up taking. So, yeah, that is about all we know for now. I anticipate that we will hear more about all of this soon, given that the event is set to begin only 8 days from when I'm releasing this video. I am very interested to see what it is all about and what the revamped Caduceus will be like. The most recent reprisal that we had with the big Alejandro back in March remained very faithful to its original talent and archetype, so I imagine that the Caduceus will follow suit. That said, its original talent scaled off of skill power, which we do not have in the Division 2. Perhaps its healing ability scales off of your repair skills in some way. However they do it, I just hope that it is viable in some form of like a hybrid build. I feel like that would be pretty fun, but that is what we know for now. Stay tuned for more on the Caduceus. Next up, I just wanted to provide some quick updates on yesterday's patch deployment fiasco and the compensation that is planned to be distributed because of it. So, if you were not following along or you didn't play, yesterday the game went down for maintenance and came back online with Year 8 Season 1.2. What players noticed very quickly upon logging in, however, is that there were major instability and disconnect issues. Deltas were booting people out of the game across various different modes and content. This was made worse by the fact that it was targeted striker in Escalation yesterday. That's only the second time that has yet happened since the system went live, and so everybody was seeing that posted online and logging in to try and take advantage of it. So this meant that not only were there frequent disconnects, which are annoying on their own, but anyone who was hosting escalation runs were losing out on mass amounts of tokens, given that disconnection still results in token loss. And that all stung extra bad yesterday, given that the update also introduced the new prototype vendor, which gives us a secondary way to spend our escalation tokens beyond just buying into runs themselves. So, not a great situation. After that, you then may have seen or experienced that the game went offline a second time for the devs to deploy a fix to counteract these crashes. They posted this message saying, to improve stability and reduce crashes, we will be taking the servers down for an unscheduled maintenance. That, fortunately, only ran for about 90 minutes as opposed to the estimated 3.5 hours, and it did seem to fix the instability. The rest of the day went pretty smoothly. However, it doesn't fix the issue of all the lost tokens from that morning, nor the lost time out of the targeted selection window, given it is only there for 24 hours. So, just in case you do not follow these kinds of things on social media, I did want to let you know that they did announce planned compensation for all of this, stating, compensation will be given later this week for players affected by the stability issues between maintenance periods today, May 12th. Thank you for your patience, and stay tuned for more info. Now, as for what exactly the compensation will be, we don't know. Escalation tokens to replace those that were lost, maybe more prototype cores. We'll just have to wait and see. They state that this is coming later this week, I would guess tomorrow or Friday, so keep an eye on the deliveries tab in your stash for when this gets sent out, and if any updates are needed on this story, I'll be sure and provide them. Alright, I then wanted to provide a quick update on the new Division game, that being the upcoming tabletop RPG. We discussed this in a video a few weeks back, some of you might have not seen it, but this is 100% legit. It is a new physical tabletop game in the world of The Division, made by Arcane Asylum in France in collaboration with Ubisoft. Now, the main reason why I wanted to bring this up today is that yesterday saw the launch of the project's Kickstarter, meaning the people now had the ability to back and fund the project to secure their copy. Well, in just over 24 hours since that Kickstarter began, they've nearly quadrupled their goal, so clearly there's some interest in this. And because of surpassing that goal, the team has begun announcing additional perks and incentives for those who choose to back the project in this early phase. That includes stuff like a collectible shade patch that will be delivered to you along with your copy of the game, as well as a planned in-game backpack trophy for the Division 2 themed around a Division die like you would use for the game. So I mostly wanted to bring this up because of those things, right? This Kickstarter period runs until June 3rd, but according to them, after that, these things will no longer be obtainable. They're being offered for backers only. They do also state that the game will raise in price by about 10 to 15% once the Kickstarter period ends and the product actually releases. So in case you're thinking you might want to get the game and you want to get it at a lower price, or if any of those perk incentives catch your eye, I will leave a link to the Kickstarter page, which has all of the information linked down in the description below. Just keep in mind that if you do back now, they estimate that the game will ship around October of this year, given that the current Kickstarter campaign is to gauge interest and properly prepare for the production process. Okay, finally, loosely related to the maintenance issues that we saw yesterday and covered a moment ago, I wanted to take a moment to address Escalation Tokens. With the aforementioned connection issues with the introduction of the prototype vendor, predictably, more heat has been brought on to the topic of tokens and their implementation in-game. Those discussions including, is the balance of them fair in terms of the risk of being the group leader who's wagering versus what you get out of a run? Some people are also questioning, should these exist at all, or would things be better without them? Now, on that latter subject, this is something that I even initially failed to recognize back during the PTS phase for this season, where in a video I too said they could just remove the tokens altogether, and I don't think too many people would be upset. The problem with that idea is that given how prototype drops are structured within Escalation, removing tokens entirely would break the loot distribution balance of the mode. Given that any enemy in an Escalation run has equal chance for a prototype drop, if there were no tokens, players would just queue into tier 10, and even if they could only manage to take out like 3 to 4 enemies in the starting room before wiping, that is still a good chance at getting a drop, and those drops would then have the best chances at the highest qualities given it is T10. Now, again, that wouldn't be so much of an issue if drops were structured differently, but that is not the current implementation that we have, so there has to be some kind of buy-in, some kind of risk, otherwise tiers 1 to 9 would just automatically get invalidated. However, that does not mean that there are not still problems with the current system. As mentioned, the big topic right now is that leaders take on all the risk by wagering their tokens, yet even on a successful run, tier 10 completions net them like 8 to 9 tokens, I think, on top of what they put in, whereas group members get 25. And so that leaves very little incentive for you to be the run leader when you risk less yet gain more for not being it. and this has resulted in a very real issue in game where no one wants to lead, right? I've been in matchmaking groups myself where people will just ping pong the leader status back around for minutes on end at the mission entrance, given they do not want to be at a disadvantage. Fortunately, this issue has been acknowledged by the dev team, and so I wanted to relay some of what we've heard so far. Someone tagged the Division 2's game director on Twitter, bringing up the same points of leader disadvantage and disconnect risk, and he replied by saying, "Hey, it's on my list to rebalance the tokens formula. For sure the leader is the one that should get the most rewards for risking his tokens. Thanks for the feedback." Now, admittedly, on my list is not incredibly encouraging in terms of a timeline as for when changes here may get implemented, but at the very least they're aware of the problem. Someone else also commented on how they agree that leaders need far more reward. However, they shouldn't just flip the current dynamic, as that might disincentivize group play within Escalation. And Alex commented on that, saying, "Exactly on point. The person that risks the most should be rewarded the most, but not to a degree that it creates a massive disparity." So, Escalation Token rebalancing is on the table. As for when we will see it, though, that is TBD. I know the community has suggested many potential improvements here, many of you here on the channel as well, saying, why not have it so that wagering tokens for a run draws from all group members' funds equally, so that there is no one person risking more than anybody else. Of course, the payouts at the end of a run could then be adjusted accordingly. I think that's a solid idea, especially given that you are unable to matchmake for a given tier unless you have enough tokens for it anyway. That ensures that everybody would have sufficient funds. I'm sure there's many different ways they could go about it, but definitely between payout disparity, increased pressure to lose tokens given the introduction of the proto vendor, we need to see some changes on this front sooner rather than later. Well, there you have it, everybody. That is the video. That is the roundup. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. I would love to get any and all of your guys' thoughts on today's video, whether it be about the Caduceus. What do you think the source of it will be? How do you think they may adjust the talent to fit into the Division 2? What do you think about the token conversation? How do you believe Escalation tokens need to change for the better? Or even on the tabletop RPG, what do you think about how it looks so far? About some of the perks that they're offering? Let me know. I'll be very curious to read through all of your thoughts. That is going to do it for me on this one, though. Thank you all so much for coming by and watching. Hope to catch you back soon. But until then, RogueGold. Ow. Oh! We just got a Ravenous! Haha! I might not be friendly. Let's go.
Coming to the Division 2.
Let's go!
And